last year versus this year? Are these new residents? Is there any background you can provide?
Yeah, I can answer that. So we handle every single complaint that comes to the department. We'll take the call if I'm there. I'll always answer a complaint within 30 minutes. We will have somebody at the house within an hour every time. What we've done for every complaint that we take, I will take samples from the property. We'll typically bring them to our lab and we'll do a physical parameter test, which would test for color, NTU turbidities. We would touch just the physical parameters. If the customer thought that there was a bacterial issue, or if that was ever mentioned, I would send it right to a state certified lab for a bacterial analysis. We're mandated by the Department of Public Health to test 9 sites, sample locations throughout the state monthly. We do 20 throughout the state. We do well above and beyond what we're
Marty, throughout the town.
Throughout the town. I'm sorry. Yeah. Throughout
I
our
understood
system.
that. Right.
Yeah. Throughout our system. I know what you're saying. Jim and I have talked about it. It's something I like to call the Facebook phenomenon, where one person has a problem and next thing you know, everybody in town has it. I don't answer. I don't answer.
Oh no,
Facebook.
I don't expect you to do that.
No. So anybody that has, and there's one gentleman in particular who's back on again, complaining about the water. I tested his water and explained to him that I would actually like to submit it to the state to see if we have the best water quality in the state, because I think that water's right there with it. I think it would probably add better turbidity and color than we would expect at his location. He has a rather high, a lot of people don't understand the chlorine residual where closer to the filter plant you're going to have a higher chlorine residual. And as you branch out throughout the system, it's going to get less and less. So we handle each complaint, individually, but everything is always answered.
What you, just to interrupt you, Candace, too,
Sure.
But from what you said, Marty, I'm up on Lakeview Road, and we're real close to the plant.
Sure.
And we said, I put a filter. I actually I cook the water off, so whatever the terminology for that is, so that you don't have any of the other taste and so forth from it. But we're so close to the plant that's what I anticipated I was dealing with, and I think that what you just said is actually very, very true.
Sure. So we tell people, there are state standards, and we're always within state standards. So we try to, and if not, we'll have to flush a line, or it might be the homeowner's issue. A lot of people have hot water issues. We don't test the hot water. What happens inside the building, we're not really responsible for, but we'll give them information. We'll educate them and try to help them get the best water clarity they can. What a lot of people don't understand is that we have to meet certain state standards, and if that's not acceptable to the homeowner, then they may have to put a filter on to get it to their standards, what they accept, for a higher quality. But I'm very comfortable that we're well within state standards, and so is the state.
I actually have a little input on this too. I'm close to the plant at my house, and my water gets tested every single year. I'm on their rotation list. So ever since I've owned this house for the last 20 years, my water is tested once a year as well. So, and yes, I do have a high chlorine level. And my biggest thing is I've been watching the Facebook thing too. I gave Marty a call. I'm sure he let Jim know. And I actually talked to a couple other people, because one person might have a problem. Do his neighbors have problem? It might be just him, like Marty's saying. It could be inside his house. He could have cast iron pipe. He could actually have lead pipe inside his house. He can also have galvanized. Galvanized will be the worst for dropping the water quality down. So I've been paying attention a little to that. And I take it personally. I actually take it to heart. I get a little upset and a little rant, and I'm not going to say anything either, because I think Facebook phenomenon is actually right on, Marty. Like you say, one person has a problem, everybody does, but not everybody's complaining. So, and if they don't complain, nobody can do anything about it. I mean, actually call. Don't put it on Facebook. If you have a problem with your water, should be calling Marty, and then you heard him, he gets right on the job. So,
You know, a big part of this is we've been cooped up too long with this pandemic.
absolutely.
Well, what I was thinking was, I'm sure you're doing all the follow-up and all the testing and everything like that. And I was just wondering if it was, like in a police report, you say how many calls you've come in, how many you've investigated,
Right.
and what the results were. Just a simple month-by-month statistic that could be available on your town page to say, water quality inquiries. So if somebody wanted to find out details of how many calls were received, how many were investigated, and what the results were, then they could just go to the town website. You could direct them there instead of that Facebook interaction. That's where
Right.
and if somebody were to call for a complaint, say, hey, by the way, this is where we post our results of any inquiry we get on the water. And I think that would it won't alleviate the Facebook people, but it gives
Right.
them a place to point to qualify what you're saying. Because, I see that we're going to send out a survey, do a survey now for the a watershed survey, but there's no survey on the water quality. So it's like, okay, we're going to try and, I don't know. I just think that it might be a solution to helping with that. And I was also thinking, if it's the pipes, as it could turn out to be, do you then, or could you then, it's not sort of give and if it's the homeowner or the landlord, give them a citation, a warning that they need to replace this or something, some sort of record, this is, or, notified that it was determined that the pipes were giving this, the water clarity an issue. Just sort of, I don't know, some way to document or keep track of who's calling and, if it's a slumlord that's not doing something versus a homeowner or, just a thought.
Sure. Duly noted. We do keep record. We have record of everything. So, and again, a call or a complaint or a water quality question never goes unanswered. Never, ever.
I didn't think it wasn't.
No.
I was just trying to figure out a way to, negate this
We're proud of-
constant
yeah,
bad
sure.
information going out all the time.
It's not, so and that's the problem, when you look on that, if you do look on like Facebook, I mean, it's really usually about the 6 same people. We have well over 6. We have 2,700 customers. There's not 2,700 complaints. There's not 100
No.
complaints. There's not 5 complaints. There aren't 4 legitimate complaints. There's 0 water quality issues. We don't have bad water. So when somebody says, what do you do about your water, your water problem? I don't have a water problem. We have excellent water. And that's, I
couldn't agree more.
say that's the first thing I do when I go in a house, Candace, is I take a drink. I'll have a drink of the water and I'm more than happy to.
And if he drops, they know they have a problem.
Yeah.
I have the same issue with my neighbor. I mean, we both have 2 wells. I
Sure.
have no problem with my well. Across the street, her water is an absolute nightmare.
Sure.
I don't know what it is, iron or whatever it's in hers, but I said,
Yeah.
just move. I don't want to hear about it anymore.
Candace, you got a lot of distractions there.
What do you mean? Oh, you
The
see
animals.
them? Well, there's 11.
Too much.
There's a bunch that are outside. Yeah, but they're not saying anything.
No, they're quiet.
Quiet.
Yeah.
So Candace, just to follow up a little bit on your question.
Yeah.
We keep paper records of all the calls that come in and we archive those. If we see an uptick or we notice something, we can always look back. It's kind of laborious. But we are in the process of implementing a much more automated searchable system. We're just not to the point where it's actually functioning to that level yet. We're still doing mostly our data input and setting the system up. So within the next year, we should probably be utilizing it, at least to some degree, to track these complaints.
I always like to have, like the records like you get from the police department. And I know you're not a town operation though, but it's just like, here's the month report of how many inquiries, and the results were just a simple spreadsheet. But once you get your data in, then you could probably pull out a report that gives that.
Well, that's the whole point.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
Any other public input? Hearing none, approval of minutes.
Make a motion to approve the February 9th, 21 minutes.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passed. Okay, Tim Abbott. You're on.
I'm on, I'm here. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. It's a pleasure to see you all, and hope this will be informative and maybe even inspiring. I'd also like to thank, before I start, both Doug and Jen, who I see are sitting out in the audience from the Land Trust, who've been incredibly helpful getting us to where we are, and Jim, who's also been very helpful. So why am I talking to you? About 2.5 years ago, we approached your town supervisor, and he set up a meeting with some of you to see whether it might be appealing to tap into some federal funds that would place conservation easements on your water company. And the funds are from the Highlands Conservation Act, which I can talk about briefly in a moment. And the idea would be that the Highlands Conservation Act can pay for 50% of the appraised value of conservation easement. So one of the first steps, if this was at all interesting, was to make sure that you were able to secure Highlands funding. And the second step, if you were at all interested, was to get an appraisal. There was enough interest to take the first step, so we put in a no obligation competitive grant request through the state of Connecticut to the Fish and Wildlife Service that administer Highlands Conservation Act in the latter part of 2019. And the conservation value of your excellent water and excellent water company is off the charts. And it ranked #1 in 4 states for these funds. That meant there's funding available. And DEEP has actually an earmark of some Highlands funds for this project, should you wish to do it. The next step was a long one and involved appraising not just the full fair market value of your water company lands, but then determining what the easement value might be in order to determine what you could be offered. That took a lot of time. Among other things, it required figuring out precisely which parcels, figuring out whether they were class 1, 2, or 3 watershed land. And we have a pretty good sense of that. But that affects value because highest and best use for class 1 and 2 is what it is already. Meaning that class 3 is where the value would be. We also received some great information from Jim and from Jen Perga to go into the appraisal, which of the 25 parcels of your water company had close access to utilities and that sort of thing. The final appraisal we got back in September, it's huge. And then it had to get reviewed at DEEP by an outside appraiser. This is what's called a yellow book appraisal. So it's the federal appraisal standards that are required to determine what the conservation value is. The idea is, if you're not familiar with conservation easements, you still own the property, you give up certain rights and you retain other rights. The value of the rights you give up is determined by figuring out the before and after for the property with and without the easement. The end of all that, back in December, the review appraiser said, yep, I agree with this appraisal. And we shared the numbers with Jim and with your town supervisor. And they're They're lower than we had hoped, but they make sense. The per acre value of 1,341 acres, unencumbered except as a water company, is 2.2 million and change, or $1,650 an acre. That's what your land is worth as it is, according to this appraisal. And then you figure out what it's worth after the easements go in place, and it drops to 650 an acre for easement value, because some of it's wet, and class 1 and class 2's highest and best use is not developed, but as a water company. So that meant that the value of the easement is $885,000 on those acres. I know that you have greater maintenance needs than that, and the funding source that we have can pay you half of that, $442,500. So I shared that with your town supervisor and with Jim, and it was clear that the number was disappointing. And there were also questions about, well, what would you be still able to do and what would be required of you with conservation easements on your water company in exchange for such a payment? And I can answer the second part now, and then we can talk about whether there's any wiggle room on 442.5. You still own the water company, you still run it as a water company. There's 10 acres of it where you have buildings and infrastructure now down near Crystal Lake on, I think it's parcel 24 of the 25, that are outside of the easement restrictions. You can do expansion there, you have no limitations on that. You can maintain your 2 dams, you can maintain the aqueduct, you can continue to run your water company. In addition, Highlands easement can allow you to do forestry activity that protects water quality and is sensitive to rare species habitat. You have a federally listed rare species on your property. It's in your aqueduct, so there's that. You also, after the appraisal was done and therefore not captured in the appraisal, got National Historic Register status for your property last year, which would only limit it further in terms of its resale value. So I think we've got a good appraised number, even though it's lower. Deep would hold the easement. So the federal money goes to the state would pay you, and they would retain the easement. So you wouldn't be dealing with Fish and Wildlife Service, you'd be dealing with Deep. Although they can have co-holders, it could be a land trust as well. And it could be Winchester Land Trust, it could be the Housatonic Valley Association, for whom I work. Deep requires some form of public access. A challenge, given unauthorized trespass issues in providing safe drinking water. A challenge, I understand, because you have limited abilities to keep people on ATVs off as it is. The idea would be to site something that runs really close to Rugbrook Road. To your south is additional conservation land with trails. To your north, along the Mad River, there's lots of trails. So maybe by mutual agreement, you could come up with a walking trail that avoids everything you want people to avoid and satisfy that requirement. We knew from the start that's not an easy ask, but it is a requirement of the funding. In addition to paying 50% of the appraised value, Highlands Conservation Act also covers 50% of the considerable costs that Deep incurs accepting the easement, a survey of 25 parcels. Whatever baseline report is needed to document the current condition of the properties, HVA is offering to do for free. Other things, title, that sort of stuff. So And there are some resources that we have and which we've already put into it to date, covering half the cost of the appraisal and some of the review appraisal. I think we're in about 15 grand right now. And again, you've promised nothing, so that's fine. But I wanted you to know what we've invested to date to get to the point where you can consider it. Beyond that, I guess the big question is there is no way that you could be paid more than $885,000 because that's the appraised value at full fair market value. And I have $442,500 from one federal funding source. And I have no idea if I could raise the remainder. I could raise some of it. I could get you over 500. I don't know how much beyond that. But one of the things that I'm hoping you would think about and give me some feedback on either now or at another meeting is whether you can see a conservation transaction working for you with the parameters I've just described. If we ended up saying, well, you'd like full fair market value, then I would need a couple of years and I couldn't promise you I could pay it. I'd make a good faith effort. Whereas I know we've got 442.5 and I can get you about 500,000. I know you've got over 3 million in maintenance costs you're trying to deal with. This won't do all of that. But I guess my pitch to you is it shouldn't affect your current operations with the single exception of how you cite public access. It will give you funding toward your needs that you can spend as you need to. And it will ensure that conservation of your water company, which is what you want in the future, actually provides you some revenue. I think it's unlikely, maybe you'll think differently, that Winchester will find another source of water and decide to sell this for development. So extracting value from the land while conserving it is what prompted us to talk about conservation easements with you and this funding source in particular. So that's where we're at. The appraisal in PDF form, I believe Jim has seen, and maybe the rest of you have had a chance to look at as well. If not, it exists, happy to share it. The Highlands money goes away in a couple years. So if it's something you did want to pursue, or at least get to the point where you had something you felt the town would be comfortable with, recognizing that the closer we get to full fair market value, the more I'll be scratching my head about where I would find the extra cash. But if this would be still of interest, I'm fully in to help make it work for you. And I know that you have other support from the land trust as well. I think I'll stop there. Are there questions that people have at this time or reactions? Sorry, Jim, you're muted.
Turn on, Jim.
Yeah, so Tim, I think it would be super helpful for everybody to get a little better understanding of what is required under the term public access. What must we allow? I know that would help me, and I assume it would help the rest of the people that are watching.
Sure. So strictly speaking, the Highlands Conservation Act does not require public access, but DEEP does. So it's not a federal requirement, it's a state requirement. And they know they need to be flexible with this one because of the sensitivity of the water company as a drinking source, although the state has experience with protecting water company land, the old Bridgeport hydraulic Kelda deal that you may remember that created Centennial State Forest watershed in largely Fairfield County, a little bit of Litchfield. But also because you have the rare species on the property and it's federally listed, it's not state. So it's covered by the Endangered Species Act. And it's in your aqueduct. So questions of how the public would interact with the property are governed by that. We're basically talking about finding a walking trail that avoids sensitive areas. Jen, did you have an additional thought? Sorry, I'm seeing your hand up, but you're muted.
I know I would like to see some type of a map, you know, of the whole area, since you did all this work, so that we, you know, we can take a look at it and see which areas are sensitive and whatnot. I know MDC has trails on their property, and apparently they don't have any issues over there. And I'm quite familiar with Aquarian up in the
Mhm.
Norfolk and the Canaan area. So it would be nice just to see, you know, what everyone's thought is, you know, or a map on what's what.
Sure. I don't know whether it's your policy to allow sharing screens, but I could share a map pretty quickly if you did.
Tim, in California where I lived, there was this big water company land, and they had organized hikes a couple times a year, and you could only go on the land with people. Is that an option, or does it have to be open all the time?
I think it's a negotiation with Deep, to be honest with you. I think that there we go. They and Fish and Wildlife Service will try to be flexible. Here's a map that actually, I'm going to just open this in a PowerPoint where you can see it from the beginning. So half a second without things blocking it.
What's for dinner? Pizza?
All the Mad River Basin maps and trails are being developed by, I don't know, Winstead Trails and possibly the YMCA. So that's the Mad River Basin that is highlighted in one of the areas.
That's okay, Tim, if you can't pull it up.
You know what? I had it and it just went away.
Yeah, everybody's coming and going. So, I mean, if you shoot the map to Jim, he can send it out to everybody. It's fine.
Sure, I can do that. I don't know if you can see what I've got here now. I'm
Yeah,
not even going to move the slideshow around a little, but obviously here's Crystal Lake and here's Rug Brook Reservoir, and everything you see there in sort of the fuchsia, those are existing trails near you. All right, so this is all, this is the Mad River, this is Algonquin. Everything you see there is a trail system. The P's are parking, right? And then on Rug Brook Road down here, here's another one. And in fact, this is the discontinued part of the road there. And there's parking down here in Winchester Town Center. So theoretically, all right, that's you, this is you here. I don't know how you make those two quite link, or if you just said, hey, it's okay for the public to go here. And it's
Well,
okay.
they have the road to walk down.
They basically do. I mean, I feel that way, right? They have the road to walk down, and then who knows? It's a negotiation with Deep, and there are some cards to play with them. Deep is sitting on, it doesn't help you because you can only get 50%, but they are sitting on too much Highlands money and not enough to match it. They've got to move that money, and they continue to get more. It's embarrassing only in that it's a tremendous amount of federal money that's hard to use unless somebody's willing to do a 50% bargain sale, because Deep has very little money of its own. So
I understand that.
all right. So the other negotiating point you have for, like, let's make public access as innocuous as possible is this would be hands down the largest acreage that the Highlands Conservation Act has done, right? Because nobody's worked with a water company yet. And although we've moved more money than 442,000 at a time, we need to close more Highlands projects, and so they have an incentive to try and figure out a way to make it work. So the best I can say now is a thoughtfully sited trail that doesn't mess with what you're doing and doesn't put an administrative burden on you is what we try to achieve. The other thing I can show you now quickly, here are all the parcels that we appraised. And these two fuchsia lines are the two drinking water basins, one that goes into Rug Brook, one that goes into Crystal Lake. Anything within those lines is going to fall into class 1 or 2. And so what you're seeing in green is what we think is class 3. And again, my caveat is this has not been reviewed by Department of Public Health. This has been taking the actual standards for how you determine class 1 or 2 or 3 and using GIS to try and figure out where they'd be. But that was the basis for the appraisal. And as I think you're familiar, class 1 and 2, as long as it's providing for public drinking water, that's its purpose. You can't sell it. Class 3, there are ways to deem it surplus, offer it to the municipality, offer it to others. That's the more, there's theoretically more developability there, but look where it is. It's inaccessible, it's far back, it's not on the road. That's why the appraisal came out the way it did. Appraisal makes sense to me. I was hoping it would be a few $100,000 more, but it definitely, it's a legit number. It's just not a big number.
Okay.
So I'm happy to provide those things. I'm not asking for a go, no go today, but I would love you to think really hard about whether it's something we can continue to talk about and whether at the end of the day, something less than 885,000, but more than 442,005 is feasible, because that's where we are.
Just a question, the trail access, is that going to be limited to a certain time of year, or is it all the time?
I think that's a point one could discuss. If I remember how the Bridgeport hydraulic deal went, and that was 15,000 acres with multiple ownerships, so they actually were selling the class 2 and 3 land subject to easements on top of it and divesting themselves of it. But there was a 3-way management agreement that came out of that. Mm-hmm. And they basically had to agree to how and where public access would happen on each of those properties. Some of them down in Ccct, there's trails all over them that people can just use. And others, there's really very limited access. So DEEP obviously wants to be able to show that there is a public benefit that the public can use and enjoy. On the other hand, the real public benefit is drinking water. And the second real public benefit is massive conservation value in your forests and in your water and in the habitat that it provides. So I think, again, there are creative ways to approach it. And there have been some changes at DEEP that I'm handicapping a little bit. There's a new deputy commissioner who really likes public access, but understands that you can't have it everywhere. Mm-hmm. As far as forestry goes, again, this is not a no-cut deal. This is you have a forester who works with you, and when you think about where you might want to do some selective harvest or some timber stand improvement, you already have to think about water quality. You'd also think about habitat. That's the extra piece to it, and that's not too terribly difficult. Okay. So that's what we got. If 885 is a no-go, let me know and I'll stop spending money on this. If somewhere between 500 and 885 we could make a deal, I'd love to, and I think we could, but I don't want to force something on you you're not interested in. I want you to understand it before you say let's go further. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so everybody can see each other. Or at least I think I am. Just a second. Yep, there we go. What else would be helpful for me to provide for information to Jim or to others as you consider this possibility?
What types of I assume any type of a transaction like this where we enter into an easement agreement would have to go before the town, similar to an 824 referral.
Yep.
Am I correct in that assumption, Pam or Tim?
I think the town has to agree, yes.
So I guess it's really us, making a recommendation or not to the Board of Selectmen, the public, land use groups, the water company, so forth and so on.
Exactly right.
Yeah, Jim, we went through this a number of years ago when I was on the Board of Selectmen. There was a long discussion about putting, getting some money in, for the conservation easements. And it was a long, drawn out thing with the Board of Selectmen. And it was definitely an 824. And it would, I imagine Candace probably knows more, but probably a town meeting kind of thing too.
And then one other thing that I think the committee should consider when they're thinking about this is the benefit of having public access is that the people that are out there, it's okay for them to be out there. Whereas now we do have people out there that it's not okay. There's ATV trails, there's erosion, not that you're going to stop it, but it's a little less likely that the carnage will be as bad when you've got just the general public out there walking and hiking. So it's something to, it's public access isn't necessarily a negative thing. It could be a positive thing. And I'm not trying to steer the group one way or another. I have mixed feelings on both sides. So just throwing out some of the points that I think should be considered.
Jim, thank you for raising that. I think you've got willing partners in the two land trusts that are on this call and helping think about how to make that a positive rather than a negative in terms of how we might help with engaging with the public and making sure that the kind of uses people expect to have there are the kind that you would want.
Right.
One other question I was curious about is what type of maintenance requirements are there on a trail? That, is that something that the town is going to have to worry about, a tree falling on someone on their trail and it's going to turn into a costly maintenance item that we have to deal with?
So that's interesting. As long as you are not charging a fee for people to use your trail, there's some protections in Connecticut state law for liability if somebody uses the trail and sprains their ankle or trips on a log. It doesn't mean they won't sue you. It means you have good grounds to win that case, but that's worth knowing. Trail maintenance and just making sure that there's appropriate signage and what on something this size. You could have an agreement with, again, either of the land trusts that are interested in helping you do this to find ways to maintain trails. In fact, the Blue Trail system that Connecticut has is maintained by agreement with Connecticut Forests and Parks. So the state doesn't maintain the Blue Trails. A third party does, depending upon what you end up agreeing to public access. If it requires annual work, there would be possibilities for tapping into that kind of expertise. There's no requirement from DEEP other than that you have the trail and a sign that says, here's the trail. But I take your point. You don't want to send people on something that isn't passable after bad storms and things like that.
And could access, would they consider something like just exclusively hunting as public access and not trails?
That's interesting. They like hunting. They like being able to offer that. And I guess the challenge is, do deer hunters feel good walking through old forest and dragging a deer back without a vehicle, or is your property great for that? And would they love to be there? I don't know the answer to that. But those are the sorts of questions that I think would be fruitful to have. If your reaction right now is not hell no, stop thinking about this, but let's think about it some more, then we can also bring DEEP into the room when you would like to talk to them directly. It would be Matt Starr, someone who Jen and Doug and I know well. because from their perspective, they'd like to make you an offer, and I'd like to make sure you're comfortable with what you're agreeing to and that the price is right. So.
And I think that the threshold we have to cross is, are we interested in this kind of money and these kind of additional details that are associated with a conservation easement before
Correct.
there's a lot more activity and energy placed on this. So I think that the commission's got to take the step to evaluate what's been presented tonight and what our knowledge of this is, and what our expectations of our responsibilities are, and
Certainly.
then go from there.
I think that's wonderful. I obviously will be available if you have further follow-up questions. And again, if you're looking at each other and saying there's just no way this would fly, just say that. If on the other hand, it could fly, but there's more questions, then ask those. I'm happy to try to help work through them.
I think there's, from my standpoint, from our involvement, and I've only been here since, I guess, 63. It's nice to see this kind of energy and the expertise that's been put into the evaluation of this opportunity. And I certainly appreciate everybody's input.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Oh, I have two quick comments and one quick question. This is addressing what Jim said, Jim, about maintenance. I know Candace might be able to speak to this too, but through Candace and I are involved with Winston Trails and Winchester Land Trust, and there actually are people out there who are willing to volunteer to, be in charge of a trail or that type of thing. And also your hunting idea, I know that Weantanog, which has a new name, but anyway, that land trust, they work with hunters, and the hunters might actually be a really good solution to keeping the problem people off the land. Like, can be really effective, and there are models out there in the state for having hunters sort of be the stewards of properties. And then Tim, I'm just wanted to follow up with one question that you and I talked about, the endangered or the species that is a concern there.
Yes.
You and I talked about whether or not that might be another source of money to show that, this is protecting this species. Like, could that add to the money aspect?
Yes. So there could be, I'm having to think where, not from the same pot, but Fish and Wildlife Service clearly does care about any federally listed threatened or endangered species, and you have one. And because it's a public forum, I'm not saying more about that, but it's not a problem for your water company. It is something where there might be some habitat restoration money or other sources of funding to help that species that would also help you with your maintenance needs. And I would be more than happy to investigate that sort of thing in addition to what's on the table tonight. Hi, Candace.
Hi, there also is, the YMCA is partnering with DEEP. So it's very interesting. DEEP's talking with Winstead Trails and the YMCA for their FIT program.
Mhm.
So, there's a lot of work. There also was a lot of design work that was done on the Mad River Basin for entertainment beyond trails. I mean, people are using it now for cross-country skiing. They're using it for hiking. They're using it for the skidoos right now, but they're probably on the trails that have been identified. I agree with Jen. The hunters might keep people on the trails, and hopefully in orange clothing. But it's so many people talking to DEEP about the exact same property. It's very interesting. I don't know how all those different groups relate to this either.
Well, the only other thing to add is you may have noted that the governor has a climate council that has done a lot of work over the last year on a range of different things. And environmental justice, diversity, different user groups, recreation groups is a piece of that, in addition to flood control and habitat protection and other things. And so probably as this year goes forward, there'll be more of those sorts of conversations. How can we serve the needs of communities that get people connected to nature without degrading it further, and providing appropriate opportunities for that? And how can nature do what it's good at to mitigate bigger storms, flashy floods, carbon, all of those kinds of things?
Yeah, our goal's been to connect Winstead, North Barkhamsted Trails,
Yes.
and the Sue Grossman Greenway to come into the center of town, and to connect that all together, because that really is one of the huge outdoor benefits of living in Winstead.
It's what intrigued me about Rugbrook Road, given what's north and south of you. And that, incidentally, that image I showed with the fuchsia trails, it comes from Northwest Connecticut COGS.
Winstead Trail.
No, that one doesn't. That one comes from the COGS database of local and regional trails, which HVA did for them in 2017, and took data from Winstead Trails to build it.
Correct.
So you can, through a link on the COGS webpage, explore. I think there's about 560 miles of trails within their 20-town area now that shows. And you can see where places are really well served, and you can see where there are gaps. And you can see that the Sue Grossman Greenway and something in Burlington and maybe 2 other places are the only level rail trails we have, right? So for some kinds of users, there are very limited opportunities. For rugged folk, there's quite a lot. Well, thank you. And again, I appreciate your giving me this much of your time. I will certainly follow up with materials for Jim and others and for this group. And I look forward to hearing your thoughts.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you,
very
Tim.
much.
Sounds good.
Okay, have a great evening. Appreciate it.
You too.
Yeah.
Barkhamsted sewer update.
So today was the big day where they did their pressure test, and the one they didn't really think they were supposed to do, and they could never achieve pressure. And of course, it's in the area that they did before we had an inspector on board. So I'm kind of chuckling about that today. But they're going to go back at it tomorrow or Monday. They're going to start. They think it was just a valve or two wasn't connected properly, so they're working on fixing those, and then they're going to retest next Monday. So nothing new other than I think the meters are all in, correct, Marty?
Not all the meters. No, he had to upgrade a couple. He has all the meters are ordered and on our premises, but he has to pick up a couple
Gotcha.
of larger ones.
So Jim, when's the flow meter in the manhole going in?
That would go in after they finish the pressure test.
So they might start pumping, let's say in May.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, they've got the flow meter. I just don't know that it's installed at this point.
Right. So they still can't pump till everything's done. Okay. Bruce, you're up.
Okay, so I apologize, for some reason my camera's not working, so so I have some operational documents results to review with you. Let's start with the water fund. I don't know, Pam, you got the sent you the documents. This document would be oops. Sent. This would be
Is this it? I haven't pulled up water fund.
Water fund, February is 21 with, yeah, that's the first one. Okay. So these reports are as of February 28th, 8 months through the year or 67% of the fiscal year. The water fund is running slightly ahead in terms of revenues compared to last year. So we are at 1,177,000 in terms of current water rents compared to 1,145 last year. And total revenues are at 1,315 compared to 1,306 last year. So we're running a little bit behind on past due, which we are seeing everywhere in the tax collector's office. People who are past due are continue to be past due. So any questions on the revenues? All right, let's go to the page 2. Nope, nope, not this one. Page 2 of the exit of the water. Yeah, go down. Yeah, all right. So Department 317 is at 61% of budget. I've underlined a couple items where there's some slight negative numbers in the unencumbered balance. The top one has to do with the person that you hired last summer to as the intern. I think Marty sent something out about asking for a contribution from the commission towards that cost, with remainder of it being funded by the McCarthy Fund. We don't have to talk about that now. I'm just keeping a reminder there. Overall, the department looks in good shape. I don't see anything that is troubling. If there's a need in May or June to make a transfer, I think we can do that then. I don't know, Marty, do you have anything you want to comment on this?
No, everything looks fine.
Okay.
The
Next,
uniform safety clothing, the only thing is that the only reason that's over is because we're supposed to allocate evenly between that and the sewer fund, and must have overrode half the year, just a little bit on that side, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
they've been doing the first 6 months on water. The second
Yeah.
6 months were supposed to come out of sewer, but I don't think
Sure.
they did, because that's
No.
quite a bit ahead of schedule.
Yeah,
okay, what is this, the cleaning of the uniforms?
yeah,
Correct.
uniform
Oh,
rental
okay.
cleaning.
Okay. The Crystal Lake plan is at 56% of budget. I don't see any issues there. The administration's at 65% of the budget. You'll see that we did send $74,000 to the pension fund during the month. That counts for most of the month's expenditures. The Water Commission, the last department on the page, is at 55% of the budget, and most of that has to do with the monthly transfer we send to Fund 123, the Capital Improvement Fund. So overall, we're at 60% of the budget through 2/3 of the year. Last year at this time, we had spent $994,933, 48% of the budget. The difference is pretty much explained by the transfers we're making to Fund 123. It's 4 lines up from the bottom on the Water Commission department. We weren't doing this last year. We're doing it this year just to show that we're funding the capital improvements ratably throughout the year. So that's pretty much it on the water side. Any questions? John, you got questions?
Not today, Bruce.
Just give him a little while. He'll have some.
That's what I said. You're going to surprise me later.
That's right. There you go.
Okay, we'll go to the sewer fund. Okay, here, here we're also running slightly ahead of last year in terms of collection of current sewer rents. We're at 65% of the budget. We were at 65% of the budget last year, but we're slightly ahead, 955,000 compared to 942,000. Again, past due rents are a little bit slower than last year. I've underlined miscellaneous revenue septic dumping. Not a lot of activity during the winter, but I wanted to let you know that there were no rust septic dumps during this past month. No revenues collected. I presume Alex is not permitting any dumping because we haven't seen any deposit from that vendor.
Bruce, is he completely square now?
Yeah, he's fully paid off.
Okay.
So total revenues are at 1189 compared to 1183 last year. So again, we're running a little bit ahead. Let's go to page 2. Pam, thanks. Okay, this is the sanitation plant, Department 315. He's at 60%. I guess Alex, you're on the call, right? You're
Yep.
You're at 60% of your budget through 2/3 of the year. So I don't see any particular line items I'm concerned about. I don't know if you have any.
The generator fuel, that was solely from Hurricane Isaias in August.
Yeah,
That's why that's at 80, 85
yeah, 82%.
or
Yeah.
82, yeah. Training education, we had a couple, myself and Wade, both took exams and passed.
Yeah, I think there ought to be an applause for those two
Yes,
accomplishments.
Indeed.
yes.
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys.
Very good job, fellas.
Yeah, I don't see any other issues.
Okay, thanks for the commentary.
Yep.
Going down to Marty's department, pumping stations. You'll see that he's at 48% of his budget through 2/3 of the year. Again, I don't see any particular issues. We have a stray purchase order in account 826003, which is generating a negative unencumbered balance, but we'll clear that when the purchase order expires. WPCA is at 63% of budget. The big disbursement there again is the pension contribution we made in February, $32,000. The rest of it is just normal activities. And so debt administration, the only thing we're paying every month at this point is the we pay a monthly payment to the Clean Water Act note. And so that's why you see small activity in there every month. But this department is tracking the way it should, 27% through the year. We have a big principal payment that's due in June, which will take care of the rest of that. And so the whole fund is at 55% of budget through 2/3 of the year. Again, we're slightly ahead of last year. Well, we're 1,105,000 last year compared to 102. Excuse me, this year compared to 102.1 last year. Again, the difference is the fact that we are monthly funding the capital improvements, and that's why we're a little bit ahead. But I don't see the fund exceeding budgets in any department at this point. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Hold on.
No questions at this time, Bruce.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to, let's see. No, go to the next one. Yeah. These are the bank accounts for the two funds. The sewer funds had $410,000 in its operating account at the end of February. The water fund had $532,000 in its operating account. And the savings account was $1,148,000. 874,000 belongs to the water fund and 273,000 belongs to the sewer fund. So cash balances are holding steady. I mean, we will, all of the February collections for the water and sewer bills that were due February 1st will be transferred to those funds in March, as we normally do. Okay, Pam, you can go back one document. Okay, this is the capital improvement side of the two funds. Department 317 is the sewer side and Department 322 is the water side. The first page shows you the appropriations that are coming from the respective funds into the capital improvement fund. And that's what you see in the monthly activity. If you go to the next page, this gives you the activity that's showing up on the various projects. The only activity that appeared this month was $32,000 for the sanitation plant boiler. Budget is $65,000 and looks like the 50% down payment was made. I think, is there another invoice coming from the vendor on that, Alex?
Yes,
Should become,
And is the project complete there?
yes, the project is complete. The second boiler is running currently. It's running great.
So you have two operational boilers, right?
Correct.
Hey,
Very
Yeah.
good.
I
Heat.
guess. Okay, so we'll probably see that invoice come in this next month, which close out the project. You can see that the other projects are fairly idle at this time, so. As I pointed out before, the vacuum trucks carry negative unencumbered balances because the budgets for the second half of the payments on that truck will come in the next year's budget and then the following year's budget. Then the third line up from the bottom, replace the water mains at Ccght. We talked about that last month. We've appropriated $50,000 in this year's budget for engineering plans, but they had to be completed so that BART could make the application to DWSRF. So we anticipate the cost of those plans will come back in the form of the note.
Mhm.
So that covers any questions on the capital projects, which I cannot answer, but I can refer to Jim and his staff. Okay. The only, I have a couple other exhibits that I sent out, one of which has to do with the DWSRF funding. I think that's part of old business later on. I can stay on and talk about it then, but I have one of the exhibits which will apply to that.
Okay. Thank you, Bruce.
You're welcome.
Okay, so Alex, you said the second furnace hasn't been installed and in operation.
Yep, good to go.
Alrighty. Step screen bid, any update?
No, I actually emailed Joe Levin last week. He said he would get back to me sometime this week. I haven't heard anything, but when he does, I'll make sure and send it off to you, Jim, and give Alex a copy so that everybody is back on, and then we'll have some kind of idea what kind of money we're actually going to need for that job.
Alrighty. Sewer rate increase. Bruce?
So Pam, there's a document I sent out called Comparative Annual Sewer Fees. Maybe it's the last one. Yeah. Okay, so John, I think some of you asked for some additional comparisons to systems that are of similar size. So what I've given you two worksheets here. This shows you the annual cost at 5,000 gallons per month, and this is based on the most recent report that came out of Bond and Tie. They issued one for 2019 rates. And so I've ordered this in descending cost value order. Shows you the towns, I think, John, you had given me, and it's based on their rates. Now, what I don't have data on, and Bill Hester is helping me on this, is I think it'd be useful to compare these rates based on the nature and the size of their system. I mean, some systems are totally gravity fed and others have pump stations. So obviously the cost structure behind, maintaining the entire infrastructure, it varies from town to town. Notwithstanding, you may have the same number of connections. And I don't have that data complete yet. I really didn't have time to pull that together. We can generate more of this, but for you to understand towns of similar connection size and what the rates are, I saw that most of these rates for other towns are annual fees. They're fixed annual fees. They're not based on usage. A lot of these, about half of these are just fixed annual fees. So they must have a much different cost structure than what our sewer or our sanitation.
Yeah, Bruce,
wastewater.
one comment on that is you're correct. There's many different structures. And this is just what the annual costs are. Caitlin is actually putting together information on the hidden costs that don't show up in these rates.
Yeah.
That, we just do everything. We don't have extra fees for really anything, and other towns do. So, we want to at least capture.
Yep.
Maybe not system by system, but at least give an idea of where other towns are gaining revenue, so it doesn't show quite so much on the annual cost. So she's got quite a bit of data accumulated, but it's tough getting, comparing it's a lot of work.
Yeah, you guys are absolutely right. It is a lot of work. I emailed the gentleman from East Windsor, who Alex and I are actually very close to. You can see that population wise, they're a little bit smaller on the list here. But I did gather some information from them, like their plant size is about the same, 2.5 million gallons, same as Winsted. Miles of sewer, there's only 3 miles difference, and they have one extra pumping station, but they also have factories and stuff like that. They have a residential fee, which is 404, and an industrial commercial fee, which is the same 404, but then it's 50,000 gallons per year used. So they're charged extra. So you're right. The rate structure is going to be so different because no two plants are exactly alike, as Alex will attest to. So it's going to be difficult to really get it. Like I shared before you came on, Bruce, that, and Alex knows, there's a listserv for all the wastewater plants in the state of Connecticut, which I'm going to take the list that we have here, and I'm going to send out an email to these plants, which are the closest, and see what they come back. As soon as that information comes in, I'll start shooting it back off to everybody, or to you, Bruce, and Jim, if you guys want that for Caitlin too. I can add her to the list so that we can,
Especially Caitlin, sure.
Yes, so that we can get some type of comparison. So whatever I got, I'll shoot out as soon as this starts coming in. It's going to be hard. It's really going to be hard.
But the whole situation is educating our users with regards to the needs to make this increase over the 4 years. So the more complicated and complex, people are just going to turn off and won't gather.
Exactly. Right.
It's a very complex. I think in our discussion, when we go to a public hearing on our rate proposal, we're gonna have to do some work to make it as understandable and clear as possible, but no two systems are exactly the same size or absolutely comparable. So we've got to take care of our responsibilities so that we are not going to be coming up short here in a short period of time.
I agree.
Okay, well, that's the only additional data I have from what I presented last time.
Okay,
Jim, did you want to, is there other considerations we want to have in terms of, before we take this to the public?
Yeah, I guess.
Or do you want to just, we want to huddle on that before we?
I was hoping to huddle with you first before I drop this bomb.
Well,
yeah, we'll have to, let's hold until you and I have some time to talk it over.
Okay.
okay, cost for pumps, Morgan Drive, Lakeview Drive, gravity system.
So we haven't gotten any actual costs yet from Eric Hess. He's been up and looked at it. But again, he's busy. He didn't pull it together. But what he did say he would do is get us basically material costs. He's not an installer, so he doesn't really have a feel for installation. But let's get a scope of the project, and then we can just take some general numbers that we've used in the past or actual numbers that we've gotten from excavating in the streets and apply those numbers and see what it comes out to. So we might know something a little more on that for next month.
Okay. Cary Avenue.
Haven't heard a word in probably 2 months from those folks.
I'll take that off the Crystal Lake Emergency Action Plan.
We've been flooding Leonard with all the data that they've requested. So it's moving along. We're making good progress. I think, Marty, you sent me something today that I got to forward on too. So we just keep giving them, bits and pieces, and they're very happy with the progress and what they're getting from us. So, all is well on that front at the moment.
Sewer plant generator, frozen valve, water pump.
All right, I'll cover J and K here, John. The sewer plant generator, we had the West State put in a second fuel tank to avoid the issues we had during the hurricane, where we had one 330-gallon tank and where the generator was using 19 gallons an hour. So they are in and all set. Another aspect of the generator, Traver Electric came and installed another bucket so that we can actually run secondary treatment under emergency power. So we're all set there. The frozen valve and the potable water system. So here's the deal with that. I contacted a company in Springfield called Millennium Power, and they came back with a quote of $9,500 to repair that. So I'm kind of in a holding pattern at this point. Of that price, the actuator of itself is $5,700, and it does not include electrical work to tie it in. So I don't know about that. I'm just kind of, I'm going to wait another month or so to see where we're at with funding. I don't know. I got to take a little deep.
So you're looking at about 10 grand then, Alex, right?
Yeah.
Between everything.
So what that does is just a real quick synopsis. In the event that the effluent water system goes off, the actuator is tied to a pressure gauge. It senses a drop in pressure. The valve opens, and now you're using non-potable water to push chlorine so we can disinfect an emergency situation. Okay. I can tell you right now that it's stuck closed because we've had the effluent water system go down and we've had no push water for the chlorine solution. The broken PVC pipe, I've been in contact with Fran Delaney from West State. They want to start, it's a bit of a convoluted piping gallery down there. I got to figure out how to shut both the output and input so we don't get any backwater coming in. So that's on my list. And lastly, the VFD was installed by Traver last Friday. Pump is running flawlessly.
Okay, let's go back to the frozen valve there for a minute, Alex.
Yep.
Sounds like that could be a major problem if you do go down. Is that
Yeah, I've been talking to Steve about it. We should get it fixed. So in the event, you know.
Yeah, we should, since chlorination system's right around the corner, my friend.
Yeah. What do we got? I got like 25 days, so 20 days.
Thanks, I got to make that call.
So you have just a comment. You've got in the 827 line, maintenance of structures, a $20,000 budget with only $5,000 spent and only a $200 outstanding encumbrance, leaving about $15,000 unencumbered there. I mean, do you have other things planned for that, or could that be used for resolving the frozen valve?
That could be used.
all right? That'd be the best thing is get that done and the wiring done. And
I agree.
move forward from there.
All right, I'll give Millennium a call tomorrow.
Bruce, what was that account number again?
315-827.
Thank you.
0000.
Yep.
Are you gonna make a motion?
Well, you don't need one really. It's,
Yeah, it's maintenance.
Oh, you're
of-
not transferring, okay, maintenance, okay.
Unless you're gonna be over the 10 grand, you don't need a
Gotcha.
waiver.
Well,
Okay,
he's got 15, I think. Well, he's got
Right.
10 for the pump, and then he's got wiring, which is a separate
Yep.
PO. So
Yep.
okay,
That should do it. Yep.
okay.
Update on GEM software.
What's that?
Update on
Yeah.
GEM software, Jim.
It still continues to be difficult to use for tracking our zero usages and understanding, what's going on. And again, it's just confusing. It sort of works, but it's, Rhonda can speak to that better than I can.
Well, we just haven't had time to, move forward with it, to find the type of reports that would really help us. I mean, we reached out to them, but they wanted over $1,000 to create the reports we need. So it's kind of at a standstill for now.
And Bruce, do you know what the status of GEMS is? Is it going to be our software for good? Because if it is, we'll spend the grand. If we're going to be going somewhere else, we'd like to, not waste the money.
GEMS works for us in a lot of ways. I know there are, some shortcomings, but, for most cases, it works. I can't speak to, what Rhonda's dealing with on that, but that's probably a specialty need that this generalized software and the reports that they have built that are part of the software just don't meet. But I don't know, maybe we might be able to, what might be a good thing? I could ask Cindy Rhines to just, meet with you and Rhonda and Caitlin. She knows GEMS pretty well. she might be able to find out a way to get you the information you want out of some of the existing reports and exporting them, putting them in Excel files, and then giving you that information you need. So,
That would be helpful if it works.
yeah.
Yeah, I think these are special reports that GEMS would have to create. I mean, we have some reports, but they're not what we need.
Well,
To
even
compare.
if we communicate our issues with Cindy, so she completely understands them, that might be a big step in the right direction.
Okay,
She regularly deals with Kim at Walsh on Jim's questions, so she knows how to speak the language.
That'll help.
Update on Santoros. We've got the lien in place.
Yeah, well, there are liens on, yeah. Just so you know, Santoros has been making regular payments since September. They were fairly small. They're about $4,000 a month, September, October. In November, he started making $10,000 payments, which he's made for 4 months in a row. So he's working off the old water and sewer bills from Grand List 2018. Boo.
Wow. Boo.
You want him to stop?
No, I didn't realize that's pretty far back.
Oh yeah, no, he right now owes about $60,000.
$60,000?
Yes,
Yes, you heard that right.
60, and
6 and 4 zeros.
yeah, and if he continues to make payments in this amount now, unfortunately, he's under the auspices of the marshal in collecting the fees. This is the way we've been able to get the money out of him. And so the
Okay.
marshal has to take his share. So we don't get to apply full 10,000. But
Right.
at this rate, if he continues at this rate, it would take him 9 months to get current, adding into the May and August billings that we would, so possibly by the end of the year, he could be back in if he keeps up with this.
All right. My issue is I've gone by there and he's got some other vans there that don't bear the Santoro name, and I don't know what his plan is there.
You think he might be doing work for other cleaners?
Well, either that or he's reforming his company or something.
Hmm.
So before we get stuck with 60,000, if he misses a payment, is there any way we can shut him off? Did
I
you
don't
get
have
that?
I don't have an answer to that question. That's
right, so-
that's a I mean, that shuts down his business.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
it's better than him owing us $100,000.
Well, if his balance is getting less each month, I say we let him stay open.
Right, that's what I mean. As long as he keeps the payments, I don't have a problem. But when if he misses one, then I want to do something about it.
so town attorney's involved, especially as it relates to the real estate side, tax side, but he's making regular, last 4 months, he's made $10,000 payments on the water and sewer balances
Yeah. All right, that's
How
good.
much?
each month.
How much is
Yeah.
his bill?
He gets about almost 10,000 a quarter.
And he's paying 10,000 a month?
Yeah.
Okay, I can live with that.
Yeah,
Hopefully the pandemic will help him too.
well, that's what I mean. So I didn't know if that was any way related, how we had to let off some payments till things get better. Is that the way it works for him too?
Well, his whole operation has been hugely impacted by this,
COVID.
COVID and the shutdown of all the,
Restaurants. Yeah.
Restaurants.
hospitality. I mean, this guy's really, that whole operation. I mean, if he's making that kind of a contribution a month, I think we let it run here. And And
Yeah,
let them catch up.
that was my only concern, is to
Yeah.
make sure that, we were getting something.
We're not
I
getting
wanna-
deeper. Yeah.
Right.
Right. That was my thought too, gentlemen, is just as long as he's not getting deeper, as long
Right.
as he can catch up and keep it rolling.
Okay, bill adjustments, any?
I have none.
Yay.
Director's report, Jim?
I knew this was going to be a busy meeting, so I only pulled up 3 highlights. I
Thank
just
you,
sent
Jim.
out the notifications to the police department, to the town of Norfolk, and then on our website, and then a a press release that we're going into our watershed inspection period. So those just went out today, and the watershed inspection will start up, as soon as the snow is gone. So we're underway with that. The interns that we had from the last fishing derby scholarship took their first water test today. So we're starting to see
Oh,
some
good.
action on that front. So that's kind of cool to see it moving along. So we're real happy about that. But the big one we want to talk about, especially while Bruce is still here, is the state revolving fund. We've got to, we've got to be on top of, the schedule that's involved in the funding of this. This is going to have to be secured by a town-sponsored bond. And that bond has to be part of I guess it's the budget referendum. So we need a motion to authorize the town manager to push that forward into the budget and bonding schedule, so that we don't miss out. I didn't say that very eloquently because I can't say I fully understand it. So Bruce can probably supplement my ignorance with some real knowledge, if he would.
You're too generous. Pam, can you pull up, can you please pull up the documents? So it would be the DWSRF document. Okay, so I sent this out very late to all of you. I wanted to, this kind of gives, this would be something that I would present to the selectmen. Candace, you're getting an early view of this.
I won't tell.
Well, part of the Water and Sewer Commission have authorized staff to go for funding for some various water system improvements. And they are basically 3 distinct projects. And they're listed here, 1, 2, 3. The timing on them is slightly different. The first project is the most urgent, and it involves replacing water mains on various streets. The most important of which I think is the Holabird Avenue water main, which is on Upper Holabird Avenue elevation wise. So the total of the cost per the engineer's report is $1.2 million. The Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Fund has approved this project for funding for a 20-year note at 2%, with possible 25 to 50% loan forgiveness. So the project start date here is this July, according to the documents that I think we're about to submit. And so in order for the town to be authorized to enter into this debt, we have to get referendum approval. So the other 2 projects are extended out. I think the start dates are next year. Is that right, Jim?
22.
July
Yep.
22.
Yep.
I don't know that that's the case.
I thought I saw that on something that Bart had. Or were you wanting to do something on that, this fall?
In my head, I thought they were all gonna be going simultaneously. Marty, do you
Yeah, from what I
recall?
understand, I think Bruce is right, in that, it's probably gonna take most of the summer, I believe, to get the rest of the engineering and whatnot ready for the water tanks to go. And that's not a project just in talking to Bart, I'm not sure exactly where he's at, but that's probably not a project we want to start in the winter. May do some tree clearing and whatnot. We may have the funding appropriated, but I don't think the construction is gonna start.
All right, well, maybe because I've been talking with Bart on this quite a bit.
Mhm.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, he wanted to make sure that we had Bob push this whole package through, not just the first project.
Yeah, I understand Bob has to sign all 3 of the next submittals, one for each one of these projects, but I think Bart was only ready to do the water main submission in the near term.
Correct, but to make sure that all of this is on the referendum for the budget,
They don't have to do it again next year.
you don't have
I
to
agree
do
with
it.
you, Candace.
Yeah.
So,
Hit them once.
so,
Bingo.
so we wanted just to make sure we push this, authorize Bob to sign off on these and put it on the referendum for one visit.
Yeah.
That's all.
Oh, okay. So anyway,
You could give us a different start date and the end date be July 22nd or something like that. July 2022.
yeah,
Because you start with the engineering
We-
drawings in July.
Yeah, we can figure all the details out.
all right. No, we'll fine tune this thing. The bottom line is that the total borrowing authority that the commission is seeking is 5.692 million or 5.7 million. Now,
I think that's too low, Bruce. You gotta bump it up.
which numbers need to change?
Well, the first one, the 1218
Yeah,
water lines, that doesn't take into account the 167,000 contingency fund that he had on page 1 of 5%. Granted, if we get the grants, then it'll come back down, but if we don't, then we're gonna be short on that one alone.
plus 167.
Yeah, 167, 150 is what it is.
Okay, all right, so this has to be adjusted. Maybe the most
That's-
important thing of this, so this could be in excess of $6 million.
Yeah, because as I was looking through some of this and which I think is falling into doing the repair of the pipes here. It's actually on page 13, to redo some of this 6-inch line. There's 2 spots, the one on Greenwoods Avenue and T-Bolt. And I'm sure this is an engineering thing, but I think it still should be brought to light. If we boosted it up and make those 8-inch, you're looking at better fire protection, especially on the downtown area with those bigger buildings. It's not so much the pressure. I actually talked to a fireman. It's the volume. So with the 6-inch pipe, you're not going to get as much volume you are with the 8-inch. So that's going to boost it up a little bit. And I think the only difference in price is only about $61,000 to change those to the 8-inch. What's your thoughts on that, Jim and Marty? Do you guys agree, or am I?
Oh, we knocked it down because there's 12-inch on Elm Street and there's a 12-8 on right on the other corner of Gay Street. It's all larger diameter pipe right nearby where they would be hitting. If there was a large structure fire right on one of those streets, they wouldn't be hitting one of those. What we talked
Wanting those?
Yeah, so they probably there's plenty of water and then right around the corner. But agreed, that's why we decided to knock those down a little bit.
Okay. If you guys are good.
But
All
again,
right.
it's easier to get approval for more than we need and not spend it all.
Correct.
I agree.
So.
Plus at this interest rate.
Right.
Well,
Yes.
okay, so here's the catch. Okay. Some of the amounts are still changing.
Correct.
And the question is, I thought Bart was furthest along on the first project documents. We had just gotten preliminary engineering reports on the two storage tank projects, and last month, and they were, double what we originally thought.
Correct.
So the question is, will the DWSRF be able to fund those in the amounts that we are now looking at? And because it all depends on, how much we can get from DWSRF, or we'd have to fund the rest of it through other kinds of debt.
No,
And-
we believe SRF is going to fund the whole thing. And we also expect we're going to get a minimum of 25% forgiveness. The faster we pull the trigger on these, the more likely we are to get the 50% forgiveness. So I wouldn't be a bit surprised if we got 50% on the water mains, maybe not so on the tanks, because there's a lot more engineering, because the water mains are just remove and replace. So it's very simple engineering, where the water tanks require a lot. So, so I think at this point, the preliminary numbers for those tanks is high. I think I think the price on the water mains might be a little bit low. But,
Okay.
I think on average, in the end, we're gonna be fine. I think 6 million is a better number, but
Cheesy bags. I don't really want.
Okay. Well, here's whatever the number is, and we kind of have to settle it pretty quick.
yes,
The more critical thing is the timeline.
yes,
The
Right.
timeline works backwards from the referendum date, which is assumed to be Memorial Day weekend, Saturday. Okay, and we have to give notice of a special town meeting at least 30 days prior to the referendum. And at the special town meeting, these projects would be explained to the public. And you would hopefully be able to generate, approval, or this is your opportunity to get, educate the public on the projects. The selectmen have to approve this whole process. Probably the latest time that they could approve it would be Monday, April 19th. P&Z has to approve the projects before we can go to referendum. And of course, the commission has to approve it. I have you approving these projects next month's meeting. But we need to line up all the other stuff. P&Z, maybe Pam, you can talk to that. The question is, do we have the documents to present to P&Z to get them through? Yeah, for their approval on these. It's a lot to put in front of these various bodies to get them comfortable with the approval. But if you want to get a referendum, get it in on the town budget referendum, we'd have to start moving very quickly.
So
Bruce, do
so-
you need that P
go
and
ahead.
Z approval by April 15th? Is that how so that means that you need it really at the April 12th meeting?
Just a minute, let me just see. Bond council says planning and zoning must approve the project. It may be that project can be approved, that approval can happen later, but you can't start the project until you get P&Z approving. It may not have to be before the referendum. We didn't have P&Z approval on Hinsdale before the referendum. We got it before, what did we get it? We got it before the plans were approved and sent to,
No, you'd need
The
it for the
DAS.
referendum, because it affects what the vote can be for the referendum.
oh, that's right. We have to have a certain, otherwise we'd have to have a greater passage.
Right. Right.
It's either majority or a
I
certain
just don't know
percentage.
if you need it before the Board of Selectmen meeting, but if you do, it tweaks your schedule a little bit, where this group is sending it to P and Z at
Our
their.
meeting is the 12th, or we'd have to call a special meeting.
Yeah, or this group would have to, you guys, your next meeting is, you'd have to do it at your next meeting on the 23rd. No, do you guys only meet once a month? Yeah, you
Once a
only
month.
meet
Once a
Just
month.
once, yeah,
You
just
sure,
once.
John?
I think so.
Right, yeah, so like George said, yeah, especially if we're, we continue to meet remotely, then it would be a quick special meeting for planning and zoning that you probably have someone here that has a little pull. Meaning George chairs planning and zoning, so I'm sure you could muster together, a special meeting.
Well, we could call or I could call a special meeting depending, but so we could make this thing fit, because this is extremely important. We move on
Yeah, it
this.
should be a special meeting.
Yeah. So do you guys still need a motion to move forward here? Is that?
Well, I
still
got a few
understand?
more. I got a couple of
Go ahead,
questions.
John. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So we want to increase it to 6 million for the request. Now, Bruce, if you put the net amount per project, and let's say the water replacement plant pipes, we got 50% back, and it didn't cost a 1.2, 1.3. Can we use that money for, let's say, project 2 or 3 for the tanks? Or does it have to specifically go towards the replacement of the pipe?
It's one
No, what
bond.
happens is that the cost of the project. I think what you end up with is the loan amount, say $1.2 million. The project costs $1.2 million. You pay the $1.2 million. Okay. You would get forgiveness of that note. You still have to pay off the remainder of the note. You don't get any cash. It just means that your debt payments in the future, your debt service in the future is half of what you budgeted it.
Right,
Okay. Yeah.
that debt service, which is cut in half or 25% less, we could always put towards.
In the future, you can
Yeah,
build it into your operating budget and other capital improvements.
And pay off the, okay.
But I don't know when the forgiveness comes.
Right.
I'm not sure. I've asked that question and I don't think I got a good answer.
Yeah, it's just the scary part of this thing, that's all.
That's right. You have to plan worst case on this.
Right. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah. I know on my project, that it's a collection system project and it can't go toward anything but the collection system. So if I wanted a generator for my plant, I can't use that money for that generator. And if it comes underneath, I mean, the contractor put a bid in, if it drops underneath, that means the loan debt and everything will drop.
Yes.
So instead of it being 4.2, it only comes up to be 3.5. That's all that gets financed. You don't get the extra money. You don't get anything. So that's how I know our project works. I've got a feeling they all work the same way.
But our administration of the payments is going to be reduced. Which
That's correct. Yes.
is going to be beneficial for us. Yeah.
Yes.
Would it be best to increase the loan amount with a fourth line item for, let's say, contingency funds and put 225,000 into contingency funds, which we could use at either one of these projects?
I think you'd want, well, that's a possibility.
I don't want my hand strapped to say it has to go towards that one project if it comes in under budget and the other one comes over budget. That's my main concern, especially 2 years out.
Right. Right.
Well, I think what you would do here in the bonding referendum is you'd make the languages is that shall the town authorize or shall the electors authorize the town to spend a total of $6 million to accomplish, to do these 3 projects.
Right.
And that's the way I think it would be generalized. So you wouldn't have individual numbers tied to individual projects.
Right. That's how we did it last time for the sewer, but I just see the numbers attached to a certain project. I want to make sure I'm not tied to it. That's all.
Well, again, you can, I just have to verify these numbers with Bart, you know. We're looking to have, I think you to authorize Bob to sign the next document that goes to DWSRF that includes a bunch of assurances on how the financing is going to happen. And if you can give him that authority, then he can sign it. Probably all three of them based on, well, I think he wouldn't sign it unless, maybe you just want to give him authority to sign the first one that Bart's going to send in. I think Bart was going to, Jim, help me if my memory's correct. He wanted to get the water main document in first to see how it worked before he submitted the other two documents.
Yes, that's, he wants to get that document into, you know, the SRF pipeline and the approval process to so we use it as a template for the other two, which are straggling, but he wants to get the commitment for all three in the current budget.
I have no problems authorizing the signing of this one, but the other two I'd like to take a look at before.
We haven't seen those document drafts yet.
correct.
He won't be able to sign anything after April 19th.
Then you'll have to give the new town manager authorization in the next meeting.
Exactly.
Well, if we just word it to authorize the town manager, right?
Yeah.
It won't
Right.
matter which one it is.
Oh, correct. That's what you would do anyway. Right.
Right.
Not assign it to a name.
Yeah.
I'm just reminding you who physically can sign, you know.
Okay.
So do I hear a motion to allow the town manager to sign this?
I'll make the motion allow the town manager to sign this paperwork so we can move forward.
I'll
That's
second.
it. All right.
Rhonda, I think you want to phrase this as town manager authorized to sign the water main
Replacement.
DWSRF documents.
That's what I said.
Specify, you wanted to specify.
Right, John? We still just want to
Yeah.
just get the water mains and then we'll
Just
work
that.
on the rest.
That-
Yeah.
Yep,
Just the water main documents?
correct.
Okay.
What's the logic to that?
Logic is I'd like to see the other two forms before I authorize him to sign them. That's all.
Yeah. They haven't-
Yeah, so if we can give it the rest of the stuff before the next meeting, then we can authorize the rest.
I
So
mean, you
this-
could always hold a special meeting. That's no,
I was
Yeah.
thinking the same thing. If planning and zoning can do it, we can do it.
So this project number is SFY 20-44. That's the project related to the water main replacements. And I think that's the document, or it's called the Part 1 Financial Assistance Application. And that's the document that you need the town manager to sign.
All righty.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. Jim, you have anything else or
Nope.
no? Old business, sewer plant bridge still on schedule for 2022.
Yep.
Dam repair through USDA funding.
Haven't touched it. Haven't even looked at it.
Okay,
I was reading something about it the other day, but nothing useful came from it.
water regulations.
Nope, not yet.
I just got a quick question. How's that supposed to work, the water regulations? We don't have to get anybody involved, right? Can we just make the motion and pass it to use this pipe or?
Well, it's not just this one item. We were gonna
Oh, okay.
update use other materials. So it's really just putting it into a format that we vote on, I think.
But once you get all that, once you get that all together, that's all we have to do, right? It's just.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, my main concern was we approved the usage of this, last year, but it wasn't in our regulations.
Right.
So we just want to get it in there.
Yeah. So that was the impetus. And then we're like, well, if we're going to do it, if we're going to open it up for the process, we wanted to add a few other things. We just keep not getting to it.
Okay. Tree harvesting, put off.
Yep.
Same with the MIUs.
Yeah,
Over.
that's on hold until COVID goes behind us.
New business.
Is Alex still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yep.
All right,
Yep.
I just wanted to let him know that we did open that up for Russ. He can dump. He just can't dump over 2,500 hours worth a month without paying.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, I didn't know if you knew that
Yeah.
part. Okay,
I think he's just, he's burnt us, 3 times now over the last, 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
So I think he's probably reticent to come back anyway, but
no, that's
seems
fine.
like
That's fine.
seems like a big ways for him to drive all the way to Torrington when he's up in Colebrook, but whatever.
Yeah. Yep.
He's stiffing them too. I just have one thing really quick to bring up. It's more, I don't know if it's new business or whatever, but I'm sure everybody knows that the New Hartford water and sewer plants have recently been approved by the town to sell those assets. And
Correct.
that they sold them for 8 million and they're going to invest some money and pay back debt service. I guess this is just my personal opinion. I think that's the worst mistake they could ever have made because now they're at the hands and the mercy of a big company. So if Winstead or Winchester ever decides to sell our assets of water and sewer, hate to say it, but I will fight you tooth and nail to not ever give up this asset, not ever. So
No.
Agreed.
Yes, yeah, right. That'd be the first thing they do is to take all our water and send it somewhere else.
Yeah.
bottle it and sell it.
Yep.
Just
So-
a note, we are still looking for another member. If anybody has anyone that's interested in joining, we're
Same
still
pay,
down one seat.
same pay.
Same
Yeah.
pay.
Oh, we're all gonna get a raise.
Yay.
What's it look like for next month, meeting in-house or?
That
town
would be
hall?
nice. Very nice too.
I mean,
I think the way the governor's talking, I don't see why we couldn't.
Has
all right.
anybody on the board been vaccinated yet?
Yes.
I got one shot.
I got one down.
One,
Me too.
I've got 2. I had the,
I'll have the next one
Pfizer.
I'll have the next one by the next meeting.
but if we start meeting in public again, can we do it at 7?
if that's what everybody liked, that's fine. Yes.
So just so you, I believe the town manager is not going to, he's going to a COG meeting on Thursday to see what the other towns are doing. But he knows that there's interest from the public to be able to get into town hall. But he wouldn't do it before the 19th. That's when the governor's restrictions are relaxed.
Right.
It would start at the following Monday at the earliest. But I don't know what his decision is.
Well, I'm happy to report that the Norfolk Sewer District monthly meetings have been held in person ever since this COVID struck. So we are still meeting in person at the plant and keeping social distancing. So I think running a multi-million-dollar businesses, I really think we should be in person. Again, my personal opinion.
Couldn't agree more.
All
And
right.
I'll make a motion to adjourn since everybody's got such a long drive.
Yeah.
I can second that one.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night,
Thank
everybody.
you, folks.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Night,
care.
everybody.
Tomorrow. Thank you.